central event of European Robotics Week 2020, coming to you from Sarajevo, capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to wherever you are in the virtual world. My name is Steve Doswell, and it's my pleasure to moderate our panel discussion for the next 60 minutes. Our theme is Robotics for Humanity. It's the umbrella theme for the central event overall. 3 words: robotics for humanity. You might think that the middle word, for, is the least important, but when it comes to telling the world about the contribution that robotics will make to our well-being and to our futures, that word for is important. By contrast, we know that negative stereotypes very often get a lot of attention in the public media. But the members of our panel, and many of you listening and watching today, will know how robotics can help to make the world a better place and how robots can help to address some of our big global challenges. Our task now today is to share some of those positive stories with you. So let me introduce our panel. There's no time to give you a full biography. Let's just say that each one has an impressive and distinguished record of achievement in their careers so far. So I'll give just a few highlights for each person. I'll introduce them all one after the other, and then we'll go straight to the discussion. Stefano Stramaccioli is a professor of advanced robotics at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. He's a fellow of the IEEE and member of the Royal Holland Society of Science and Humanities. He's Vice President Research of EU Robotics. He has hundreds of publications to his name. Topics include medical robotics, autonomous aerial vehicles, mobile robots, haptic interfaces, actuators, biomechanics, control system synthesis, and at that point we have to click on the More button to see the full list. He's been editor-in-chief of the IEEE Robotics and Automation magazine, which under his editorship has risen to first place for impact among all journals for robotics. So in short, Stefano is well placed to share his thoughts about the contribution of robotics for humanity. Stefano, welcome.
Thank you.
Next, Francesco Ferro is the CEO and co-founder of Power Robotics, generous silver sponsor for this year's central event, and one of the leading service robotics companies worldwide. Francesco's academic background includes degrees in telecommunications engineering at Politecnico di Torino, masters in Lille, executive MBA at University of Barcelona. Since 2004, he's been working in the development of state-of-the-art robots specially designed to solve clients' needs. And today, Power Robotics is known for several humanoid robots, including Rimsi, Tiago, and Ari. Francesco, welcome.
Hello to everybody.
Ana Maria Stancu is the National Coordinator for European Robotics Week in Romania. She's CEO of Bucharest Robots, the first humanoid and service robot startup in Romania. I see your job title on LinkedIn, Anna, is not CEO, but Admiral of the Fleet, and that's a fantastic job title. And is also a founder of RoboHub.ai, where she teaches robotics and programming to children from all backgrounds and teachers and anyone who wants to learn about robotics. With degrees in political science and political communication, Anna brings persuasion to her undoubted gifts as a robotics educator. She's also a member of the board of EU Robotics and was the first woman to be elected to that board. Welcome, Anna. Senka Krivic is a research associate at King's College London. She received degrees in control and electronics at the University of Sarajevo and PhD in computer science at University of Innsbruck. Her research spans robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and AI to enable autonomous systems to operate in the uncertainty of real-world environments and working with humans. Senka is also a regular academic, author, and conference contributor. Welcome, Senka. John Erland Östergaard is Chief Technology Officer of Blue Ocean Robotics. He combines outstanding entrepreneurship with a strong academic background, a PhD and MBA, former professor at University of Southern Denmark. His PhD research into semiconductor optics led to the startup of the company Alight Technologies. Other of John Erland's startups produce LED light for greenhouses and for industrial hardening processes. So John Erland is a man well placed to bring some light to our discussion topic today. So John Erland, welcome.
Thank you.
And not least, ABB is one of the major names in robotics and of course a generous platinum sponsor for this year's central event. Our sixth panelist, Jose Manuel Collados, manages the global solutions business line of ABB Healthcare Robotics. This is the latest role in almost 21 years so far at ABB, beginning in his native Spain. This followed an academic career, including research at CNRS, France's renowned National Centre for Scientific Research, and before that, a degree in industrial engineering from the University of Zaragoza in Spain. So welcome, Jose Manuel, and welcome to all. We go straight to our discussion with our first question. It's a topic on everyone's mind. It's something of which everyone has had experience this year in one form or another. And that question is, how has the robotics sector responded to the pandemic? And I'd like to ask Stefano to begin our discussion.
Yeah, Phil, first of all, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to share the passion that we have with robotics with all the people listening. I think we are going through difficult times, and you know, we all had to adapt to the situation. And what we did in robotics, for example, I have the pleasure to also coordinate the DIH Hero, which is one of the digital innovation hubs in Europe. And the Commission basically, of course, acted quickly on even instantiating more money for addressing the pandemic with robotic calls. So we had a number of calls. And for example, some project was financed in order to deploy in hospitals, for example, disinfection robots. And that has been something which was one big success, I think, in Europe in general. Also due to the nice development that our Danish colleagues did with mobile robots with disinfection lamps. And then beside that, I think that, you know, robotics in healthcare in general has potentials, of course, has been used for the pandemic, but has great potentials for the future. I think I can get back to that later if there's need, but I would like to leave open the floor also for other opinion from my colleagues.
Okay, thank you for that, Stefano. You made reference to the contribution from Denmark. So let's go straight to John Erland. John Erland, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, so it's a pleasure for me to participate here and have the ability to present our UVD robot, as mentioned here, a disinfection robot that is out now in many countries with UVC light. It disinfects rooms. It can disinfect a patient room in 10-12 minutes. It can do it autonomously and safely for people. I mean, UVC light is also harmful for human beings. So that's of course very important that the workflows and the procedures for operating the robot is clear and safe for humans. The interesting thing for us is that this has actually migrated outside the healthcare area. So we now see extensive deployment in airports, for instance, in schools, local schools, in fitness centers, and in many of those places where there is many people coming along. So it's a fantastic thing for us to be able to contribute to fighting the horrible COVID-19 pandemic we are facing right now.
Okay, John Erland, thank you very much for that. I move to Anna now. Anna, in Bucharest as we speak, I believe now. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what would be your perspective on this question of the contribution of robotics to tackling the pandemic?
I think robots can help. That's why I entered this industry, because I truly believe, although they are just means that we can use, I truly believe that they can be used for good and not go in the other side. The only thing I have during this pandemics is that we were not prepared for it. I mean, if we acted before and we had encouraged more robots in hospital, for example, we possibly might have saved some lives. if we had these robots, the UVD robot, it's on the market for 3 years now, and it was made for hospital infections. If this were promoted more and people would have given more importance to this, then the hospitals that are handling COVID cases today would have been more in advantage than buying them when they have the money, because that's a huge problem for hospitals in Romania. For example, they don't have it in the budget this year, so they need to wait for the next year. However, we try to promote as much as possible. In Romania, for example, the emergency department opened, like in all other countries, a hospital for patients with mild symptoms, and we had a partnership with the emergency situation department when we took all our robots there. We are just integrators of robots until now. And we had some robots on stock, and we took them there to help with the hospital. We had humanoids robots who were talking to the people that was just coming and giving general information. We had the UVD robot that was disinfected, and we also had a serving robot who was taking meals to the patient's bed. So my belief is that robots might have helped even more if they were previously there.
Yes. Okay, a point very well made. Thank you for that, Anna. So robotics has been fantastic in a reactive sense, but perhaps governments and organizations could have been even better prepared from a proactive point of view. Jose Manuel, I'm sure that ABB Healthcare Robotics, you certainly have a perspective on this question.
Of course. Well, when all this large issue started, the first question and the first urgency for us, how can we support existing customers? And we have delivered over the years more than 400,000 robots that are today working in different industries. No? So keeping the supply chains was super important. So we have seen a rise in the remote services in the same way that we are now holding this meeting over Zoom. We needed to assist our customer and connect remotely to the robot, service the robot remotely. We have seen a rise in the use of digital tools for preparation of new devices and solutions. And in the healthcare issue itself, we have seen a rise of production of PPE. So we have seen many companies 3D printing masks and protection equipment using robots, not only ABB robots. We have seen some industries moving from industrial production to the production of healthcare equipment. We have a very nice story from a company called Boyle Industry in New York that very quickly, in only some weeks, changed their production from electrical cabinets to producing respirators. No? And this was only possible using flexible automation. And the story that Ana Maria was just sharing resonated very much in us. We also approached hospitals to see how can we help them. The first reaction is that they were extremely busy. So they really had an extremely critical situation, but we have been able to help in application like testing. So today, for example, Singapore government is testing 100% of the COVID tests are done using robots for the preparation, but also for the test. This has been done in a record time. So 80,000 tests per day. This is very, very incredible. And we are seeing a rise in the use of robots for the test of vaccines, drugs, for research. And this is coming very fast. So the interest of robotics in healthcare, it's increasing. And of course, Stefano and Jörn are explaining how to support in those areas where we don't want people to access, how to clean, disinfect, and how to act in dangerous situations or dangerous environments.
Yeah.
Okay, Jose Manuel, thank you very much for that. I'd like to go to our one panel member who is actually in Sarajevo as we speak today, and that's Senka. Senka, what is your perspective on this question of robotics' contribution to tackling the pandemic?
Thank you again for inviting me. So I'm working at King's College London, actually. And we were actually also tackling this problem. On top of this, everything, what was how robots were used in healthcare and in hospitals, we actually were looking into how to use robots in offices, since many people had to go home and work remotely, and there were some things left in the office that have to be done by robots. And also we were looking into how actually minimize the contact between people by having a service robot in the office who is doing some tasks instead of people. So that's
okay.
And also I would like to, on the other side from the hospitals, it's really nice how this pandemic, I mean, on one hand, it is bad that it's pandemic, but it has actually opened, many hospitals have opened the door for robots, which was not the case before.
I think that's a very good point, Senka. It's a perfect illustration of this idea that in every crisis there is opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
So, so not least, I shall move now to Francesco. Your perspective, please.
Okay. I want to remember that this tragic moment that we are living are affecting a lot the humanity. So I know that this is the Robotics Week, but I would like also to focus our attention on humans that are behind all that. So, for example, in Spain, we had a lot of clapping, you know, every night for the staff in the hospital that are facing front of this pandemic stuff. And I can just mention you that we are working on different in different projects. And one, it was thanks also to Digital Innovation Hero with Stefano about robots that are just giving food to the people that are in the hospital that needs, and so in order to stop the contact with the staff in the hospital with the person. But then we are working also with our Ari, that is this robot that I have behind me, putting a thermal camera in order to also detect the temperature inside the hospital. And another important thing is that during this period, there's a lot of people in the family that can't go to visit their parents that are in the hospital. And so using a simple telepresence, I've seen a lot of people that can stay in touch with their family remotely. At least they can help in this way this kind of people. Then for sure, we are also working on some disinfection robots, and we are trying also to make some manipulation part with our mobile robots. But I would like to say that the robotics at this moment in this pandemic period is just a tool that has to help us in order to make more human this kind of moments.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So thank you to the whole panel for your individual responses to our first question. I just want to broaden out the scope of the next question. And it's to do with robotics being seen always as something in the future. But of course, robotics are already with us in the service of humanity at present. So I'd just like to ask each of our panelists to give us an example from their own direct experience of how robotics have already come into the service of humanity. How are they kind of currently being used? For members of our audience who perhaps don't have this inside knowledge of how far robotics are already with us in our present society. So I think I'd like to go to Anna to respond to this first of all, please.
Well, I have two examples. One is from the health industry, and I'm gonna refer also to UVD robot because we actually went in lots of hospital. We gave it for the hospital for 1 month to use for free from us, just to disinfect. And usually in the beginning, when they were very panicked and didn't know what to do, and the greatest experience that I had is with a head nurse who was 60 years old. She didn't look very techy, but she loved the robot, and she learned how to use the app and actually do the disinfection herself. And I figured if someone at 60 can learn this, and it was a red-headed woman at 60, I have to say that I didn't expect that, and for me it was a huge experience and very positive. And the other example is I just took a class of smart city, just to have a diploma in this field, because it wasn't that much information that I got new, but I just wanted to see the perspective. We had there one of the speakers was the city manager of one of the sectors in Bucharest, and my final paper was on a robot that is a public functioneer. That's what I dream of implementing in Romania. And there was another speaker who, talking at the end of the class, was saying that some of the projects are sci-fi, and of course he was referring to the robot public functioneers. But this is like two ends of the same story. Some still see robots as science fiction. Some already had it in their backyard and saw it and know what to do with it. So I think we're on the right track. We still have people who meet the humanoid robots and talk to them like they are normal people, and we have to explain that it's not what they see in the movie. It's not like Terminator. It's where we have more steps to get there. But the thing is that people get the idea.
Okay, yeah, good, very good. Yeah, thank you, Anna. Stefano, what examples could you offer?
Well, I think in general, I would like to bring for the general public in context, progress in technology, combined with good ethics can only bring good to humanity. Of course, the ethics is an important fact. Every technology can be wrongly used. I mean, it is a fact that practically everything that we have is produced by robots. And robotics, starting in the 50s, 60s as a manufacturing, and now is changing. I mean, it has been used and is used now still to produce our cars, to produce everything we have. What is now changing is of course, the service robotics side. For example, actors like, where we here on the table, like PAL Robotics and a number of activity on Blue Robotics. I mean, that's the new robotics which is coming out, and to basically help in certain tasks. What I also would like to sketch is what the boundary is about our system and the future. So what I see when people ask me about robotics, I always talk about two phases: the first phase and the second phase. The first phase is we'll see a lot of deployment in the coming years, I think, in very different situations, in supermarkets, as is already happening, for example, with PAL to help. And of course, in healthcare, we discussed about it already. But what I think which is very important is a challenge for us, and to let our politicians understand is in the future. I'm talking really future, like, 20, 30 years from now, maybe. I mean, we will reach a level of technology in which we will have humanoids that can do anything for us. They can create our wealth and work for us. And the only thing actually we need is energy. Well, we have enough energy coming from the only star in our solar system. So if we start using it the way it should be used, we will also solve our environmental problems and social balance. And I think that is a very important thing to be considered, because if all the robots will be owned by single enterprise like Google's, of course, the wealth that these robots produce will not be properly spared. So we really need to rethink for the future a completely economical system in which everything will be different. But I think if we use the technology well, and the politician will understand that really will change and disrupt our society in 20, 30 years from now, I think robotics can only bring, peace and wealth to humanity, but you have to use it well.
Okay, good, excellent. Thank you for giving us that future perspective, Stefano. But let's come back to the present, and I'd like to ask John Erland, if someone approaches you who knows nothing about how pervasive robotics already are in contemporary society, what examples would you point to?
Yeah, well, I agree on the viewpoints here that the pandemic has actually opened our society's eyes more for the usefulness of robots. We see that the UVD robot is now coming out in larger numbers. There are also other robots that are coming out in larger numbers. We have our own telepresence solution now ready for the market, the Gobi telepresence solution, that is also helping in the pandemic because people can stay in contact without physical contact, and it can help in many cases. I think that looking forward, I also agree with the viewpoints of Stefano, but on the short term, there's a lot more to it. It's about the perception of robots. It's about the workflows. It's about how you can produce a robot with a decent or even a good business case for the customer to think about buying it. We have seen a huge change in the perception of how robots can be used over the past 5 years, and this was really continue and will continue exponentially. So we also expect many more deployments in the coming years. But in my viewpoint, there's very few robots deployed so far.
Okay, thank you for that. Jose Manuel, what's your view?
Well, I like very much the remark from Stefano and thinking about the comment from John and also the previous from Francesco, how the robots are utilized today and how they can be utilized in the future. We inevitably really our motto for robotics is ABB Robotics is we would like to elevate the nature of work. So, and this is what we or has been done in several industries over many years. Like, for example, we don't have people now loading and unloading stamping presses that have 2,000 tons of force, or working in foundries with very difficult conditions of heat and hazard. So same can be done in any other environment. And why should we have people cleaning infectious rooms? So we have already solutions, as John and Stefano have explained. But there are also other cases. No, we have a collaboration, and trying to show one example. We have a research collaboration with Karolinska Hospital in Sweden, where we are trying to see and pilot some solutions in hospitals. So in their pathology lab, which is the Karolinska Hospital, is the largest hospital in Sweden, they manage a million of samples every year, and it's a very automated lab. But 10% of the samples cannot be managed through the existing automation. The reason is that the samples have different tube sizes and they don't fit in the existing automation. So we deploy a robot to just register the samples in the lab. So imagine 10% of million of samples means 100,000 of samples that need to be barcode readed. And the people that needs to do this job in the lab are highly trained lab technicians that are only barcode reading. So elevate the nature of work means also allowing them to do other more meaningful tasks. So we always try to look, or should look, for this type of examples where we can really help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's a thought to take away, using robotics to elevate the nature of work. Jose Manuel, thank you very much for that. Senka, I'd like to hear your perspective on this question. And if you're approached by people saying, well, no, where are robots now? Are robots just something for the future, or are they already with us? Are they already active and contributing to society? What would be the examples that you would most naturally turn to?
Well, I think when I usually speak with people and I'm telling them what I'm working with, I think everyone have seen robots that are cleaning, like Roomba, or also gardening robots. Another nice example that I always mention is the automated company in UK, Ocado, that has robots which are preparing your order for online shopping. Like you order groceries and then you have a robot goes and quickly collects your order and sends you on your address. Another example, which maybe not most of people have heard of, is robotic kitchen. I think it's called Molly. That's also a nice example. Like Anna Maria also has mentioned, there are many service robots that we can see around, for example, in airports or in museums, some museums which are just offering information to customers and users. But on the other hand, we also still have some robots that maybe sounds like a science fiction, and that many uses are still science fiction, even for scientists and also for humanity. One of those examples I would like to mention is a project that I have been working on during my PhD, where we were developing a robot that was supposed to play with children in kindergarten and also to pick up toys with them and clean toys with them. So this is something that sounds like a science fiction, although also has many other concerns for humans. But on the other hand, I think something like that, it will be possible very soon, in very near future.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And not least to Francesco. I know you're surrounded by robots who are currently in service. So Francesco, what's your response to this question?
It's a very good question, and we are not magicians, so we don't know what will happen in the close future. But we strongly believe that humanoid robots will play a very big role in the close future. So humanoids at the moment are not only with legs. You know that we did the history of European robotics legged robot, okay? But also with wheels, we have to focus our attention in the use cases. So what I strongly believe is that robotics will not follow the same changes in our life, like, for example, cars did. So we will not change all the tools that we create for us, our chairs or whatever that we created all around us, just for robots. But the roboticist has to be smart enough in order to use the same structure, the same tools, in order to give more and more services. About the example that you asked in your question, one of the very clear example that we had is our StockBot robot that is just helping to make the inventory inside the shops. So we are working with the bigger retailer around the world. And for example, we have one of the extremely big success that we had is in Singapore, in Decathlon, where there's a shop open 24 hours, where the robot is just helping and counting the clothes and all the tools, you know, that they are selling in the shops on real time during the opening hour, even during the Black Friday. And believe me that having this kind of machine working with robots, collaborate with robots, like for example, our Tiago that are doing several tasks also in industry, is very important. But the big disruptive changes and innovation will be to have these kind of robots working at home, and so helping us, because we have also to don't forget that we have a big problem, because we are getting older and older, and we don't have enough people to assist us when we will be old. And so this kind of robotics, the assistive robotics, is very important to give a very clear answer to this kind of problems.
Okay. Could I stay with you, Francesco, because you're already touching on one of the next questions, which is to do with the role that robots can play in the care for the elderly. Could you just expand a bit on some examples of the ways in which robots can help to care for the elderly? Yes,
for sure. We work in several projects, and I can mention a couple of examples. We had a project with a Netherlands company just demonstrating that from a business point of view is very useful to use robot that are teleoperated can assist people, elderly people, to just 2 or 3 years before that they will not be independent. And so using this kind of technology, having the possibility to have a remote head from some technician or some physiotherapist or some doctor that can help these people remotely, can allow the people to stay at their home for 2 or 3 years more before entering in some hospitals. And this is a very clear success, and we are still working on that. And then from other side, we have a couple of projects ongoing now. One is called Shapes, another one is called Spring, where we were demonstrating that the ARI could help also in the house system. And so they will, we are developing some autonomous behavior that the robot is able to do autonomously, but also there's the possibility to remote control the robots in order to approach on or if the robot is stuck in some moment, the human in the loop can just solve this kind of situation. And this will be at home, but also in the hospital. We are working in an hospital in Paris, where we are just developing these use cases, and for sure also with some hospitals here in Barcelona, one in Badalona and the other one, the clinic in Barcelona. We are developing this kind of use cases. And this will be the close future that I can see.
Okay, good. Thank you. Excellent answers there. Thank you very much, Francesco. I'd like to go onto Senka on this particular question, but I'd like to. I know that Senka, you've done some of your research has been specifically looking at robotics operating in uncertain real-world environments and in interaction with humans. And I wondered what would be your perspective on some of the challenges of robots interacting with old people.
Just like Francesco has said, so we have to bring robots into real world. So, and this has to happen without adjusting the real world and changing, let's say, houses and everything, also just changing people mindset to robots. So robot has to adapt to elderly people. In this case, this can mean also that different people would like to have different kind of, let's say, approach from a robot. So robot needs to have even some kind of emotional intelligence there. So not only, let's say, some kind of technical adaptiveness is necessary, but also other things. Another thing which is important to mention here is that generally for elderly people, you would like to have a robot which maybe might want to feed if necessary, maybe help changing clothes, maybe help cleaning, but also sometimes people would just like to have some kind of, let's say, interest and maybe to chat with a robot or have some conversation with a robot, or maybe to have some other social occasion with it. What is also important to mention here is that bringing these robots into the world of human also is tackling problems of privacy of the data, and also many people have this fear of surveillance. And this is also one of the things that we are tackling currently at King's College London, beside this uncertainty that real world is bringing for the robots and different challenges.
Okay. Yeah. Good, thank you. Excellent, good. Okay, I'd like to ask John Erland this same question then. So, what's your perspective on the interaction of robots and in the care of the elderly?
Yeah, so here one of our other spin-out companies, the PTR robot, is a robot that is actually addressing the demographic change we talk about here. So it's a robot that can help people when they're immobile, when they cannot get out of the bed in a hospital, get into a chair, into the toilet. But it's combined as one of the first robots as not only a transfer robot, but it's also for rehabilitation. So it's made so that you can train with the robot, or even when you move around or use the robot, it can sense some things today, but in the future it will be even sensing more what the patient can do, so that it's not just solving a task for the patient, it's actually also trying to increase the ability of the patient himself to do things. So it's a combination of a transfer and rehabilitation robot that we are now deploying in Danish nursing homes and hospitals, but also at some sites abroad outside of Denmark. And that's a robot that's also interesting in the sense that it makes it much more efficient for staff members in these nursing homes and so on to help the elderly. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, or 4 staff members to assist the patient. Now one person with a robot can do the job. And one physiotherapist can actually train with more people at the same time with the robots. So it's doing important tasks, it's increasing the abilities for humans, and it makes the workplace much better for staff members and much more efficient. So that's what this robot is about. So this was another example for Blue Ocean Robotics as my notion on this.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'd like to go to Jose Manuel now. From an ABB healthcare robotics point of view, what provision is made with regard to robotics in the care of the elderly from within your business area?
Well, this is a very, very broad question. I would like to just to frame how we see it and how many opportunities do we have to support in different ways. No? So only in the European Union, the prediction is that we will reach 30% of population that will be older to 65 years at the end of this century. The population older at 85 will be close to 15%. Today we are at 6%, and this will be done, or the share will be mostly taken from the people that is working today. So it raises many concerns in different ways. So how are we going to keep industry? How are we going to keep our society flowing? So this will require automation for sure. And this is not only a problem in Europe, it is a global problem. So in Asia, in Japan, in US, we have same issue. How can we robots support in the care of elderly people? I think we have just listened to some examples, and I think the opportunity for mobility is very important. So this would be one that we are already tackling, and many companies are already tackling, how to move patients, how to move elderly people, and robotics will play a major role there. But also in the communication, so telemedicine, connecting people, having robots that are able to help in this sense will be very important. So there are many examples that can be taken.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Anna, your perspective on this? You're on mute, Anna.
Done. I have to say that the experiences we had with elderly regarding robotics in Romania are not very helpful, so to say. We had some of them saying that they are a thing of the devil. And another challenge that we have with robots for elderly is the fact that in Romania, most of the caring houses for elderly are usually villas with no elevators. So basically, it's very hard to put a robot there, even if it's humanoid and not very big. So we have some challenges here in this particular area, and we will probably try to find a way to improve this. We know, and we tried, for example, the pets, small pet dinosaur dogs, and that are more pleasant for the elderly to take care of those animals and to nourish them.
Oh yes, I've seen those examples in the media. Yes, very good, very good. Thanks for reminding us of those examples, Anna. And then not least, Stefano, on this question of robotics in the care of the elderly.
I think that if we could call it geriatric robotics. I mean, elderly is a very broad concept, right? I mean, we could talk, in assisted robotics. For example, you have exoskeleton for people that have a limited mobility, prosthetics, even for example, for Alzheimer, the famous example of Pyro, little simple robot that can basically be seen as puppet for people. We can go to rehabilitation robotics. Of course, if you get older, a lot of people, you may have a stroke, you may suffer from a stroke. There are very, very good examples for rehab robotics, where robots really helps people to revalidate better, and has a lot of advantage with respect to other humans doing that. Supporting robotics, that for example, a number of examples were mentioned before, related also to logistics, what Paul, for example, has been doing to bring food around in hospitals. But the things I'm personally involved is related more to diagnostic and treatment robotics, and that is actually not specifically for the elderly. But of course, there is a revolution going on, because surgery you know, the first steps were from let's say open surgery to minimal surgeries, and now the next step is going to what is called intervention radiology. And what is meant with that is basically that a lot of things you can do just by a needle. And if you navigate the needle inside the body by using wonderful imaging technologies that are out there, like, you know, magnetic resonance, CT scans, and these kind of things, you can steer a robot very, very precisely inside the human body. And if you can steer a needle robotically to a certain location, you can take a biopsy, for example, to do diagnostic and see whether a tumor is malignant or not, very precisely, being sure that what you take is the right spot. Because now it's done by hand, you don't know it all the time, you know, may have false positive and these kind of things. But of course, we can go even further. One of the dreams I have, which is something we are working on, is for example, a lot on breast oncology. And what you could do is a needle in which you basically steer the needle to a location, and then you can optically, through the needle, analyze the tissue without taking it out. And if the tissue is malignant, for example, you could ablate the tissue by laser ablation. You can basically kill by heat the cells in the right location. So ideally speaking, you would have a situation in which women just go for a standard checkup to the hospital, and 3 hours later they get out of the hospital being cured of a cancer that they didn't even know they had. Okay, so I think that, and this is just one of the things, because colonoscopy is another very big problem for healthcare in general, where robotics play a big role. So I think that, you know, the sky is not even the limit in what you
sure.
do in robotics.
Okay, excellent. That was really good, Stefano. Thank you very much. I'm going to stay with you to pick up 2 points. One is that you talked about the example of robots being inserted into the body to make very precise surgical or precise interventions. What's your knowledge of swarm robotics? I'm personally fascinated by this idea of swarms of tiny robots that can go and carry out very precise surgical interventions. And I wondered if you have a perspective on the state of the art of swarm robotics at the moment.
Yeah, I think that the swarm of robots going into the body, I see it as a science fiction, personally speaking. There are a number of activities for very micro robots steered magnetically, for example, which may be useful for deployment of medicine locally, because of course that would be. But swarm, I think, I do believe in swarm, but not within the human body, personally speaking, at least not the coming 10 years, okay? But of course, swarm robots are nevertheless very meaningful, because, for example, if you think about aerial robotics for inspection, for example, for environmental monitoring, that's a very, very serious, valuable user of swarm robots, because of course they can communicate with each other, they can use each other to localize better where they are, etc., etc. So that's, I mean, swarm robotics is absolutely the fact that robots can communicate with each other, can work in a team, because that's actually what it's all about, right? Is basically a team of robots. It's definitely a very important concept. The only problem is that for aerial, which is exactly one of the most useful field, I think, a big problem is, of course, legislation. So I think that one thing we have big challenges to tackle the coming years is really legislation and liability issues in that respect. But for example, another things which we have contributed partially toward that direction, we also developed the pipe inspection robots. You know, it happens regularly, unfortunately, that you have explosion due to gas leakages and stuff like that. So we developed a pipe inspection robot, which is now bringing it to market by an enterprise for biggest pipes. But we could basically have a swarm of these robots always in the gas network, in the low pressure gas network, just going around and recharging via inductions, which is basically, they could stop somewhere, recharge like your electric toothbrush recharges basically, and monitor and send data. And you could basically hear if there is a leakage, because if you're inside the pipe and the pressure inside the pipe is bigger than the pressure outside, if there is a leakage, you will hear something whistling. and you could detect it very easily. And then you could say, okay, I found a leakage, and you could give it the exact spot. So for example, instead of breaking up the whole street that, you know, all the people have problems, they have to walk, to drive around, you could be very precise. So that's a very concrete and realistic application of swarm world, where you have these robots in a network or in the air that collaborate to do something very useful to prevent a disaster, for example, or help the environment, which is one of the biggest concern I have myself at the moment.
Yeah, good, excellent. Thank you very much. You gave good value in your answer, as I was expecting. Thank you, Stefano. I'm going to ask the next question just to a couple of people, because we're already with 8 minutes to go. We're just getting started. We're just getting warmed up, aren't we? And yet we're running out of time. I have a final question I want to put to everyone, but this next question I'll just put to a couple of people. And the question is, what is being done, or what do we need to do to make robots socially acceptable? I don't mean programming robots to make polite conversation. I mean to make people comfortable with having robots around and interacting with them. So I'd like to put that question to Senka, first of all, in view of the research that you've done. I think you may have an interesting perspective on this.
Yes, actually, that is one of the things that we are currently tackling at King's College London. So we are I'm currently working on a project which is called Trust in Human AI Partnership. This is telling a lot because we use this especially word trust. So what we are doing is actually we are trying to build algorithms and make all AI systems as well as robots to be trusted by humans. This means that AI system and robots will have to be socially accepted by humans in some manner, in a way that there are, let's say, ways how to build this trust. So what we actually try to do here, we are trying to make explainable algorithms, which means that the human is able to ask and question all decisions or, let's say, things that the robot has done, and to try and understand how robot has concluded or came to this exact decision, and also how it's affecting the life of a human. On the other hand, the robot will have to be able to adapt to all human desires. For example, if something is not socially acceptable, there should be a manner that a human can, let's say to robot, okay, I don't want that you do things like this, please do them another way. Another thing that we are also tackling is actually morality of robots. So we are looking into algorithms, how to build in different kind of moral concepts into decision-making process of robots, as well as also we are working together with lawyers and social scientists to see how actually there should be definitely legal side as well, backed up on everything that is developing on the technical side. So also, let's say, now we are looking into which laws in the UK have to be changed in order to satisfy, let's say, both GDPR regulations, but also the technological developments on the side of robotics.
Okay, good, excellent. Thank you very much for that, Senka. I'll just put this same question to John Erland before we go to our final question for everyone. So this question about making robots socially acceptable and what adjustments need to be made. What's your perspective on this question?
Two perspectives from my side. One is that it's our duty to make robots easy to use and to understand. And we have seen fantastic responses from our PTR robot out in nursing homes. Omnidirectional wheels, easy to operate, it's intuitive. Even elderly staff members, we talked about 60-year-olds before, use the robot within a few minutes because it's just so easy to use. And the experience that it actually helps them in their job and their function, they can do more, be more helpful. It's all about bringing the robots out, and people should get to work with them and learn how to use them. That's one perspective. Another perspective is that.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I think you're breaking up, or perhaps I'm breaking up.
Sorry.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much for that, John Erland. In the course of time, we must move on though. We could have a whole panel discussion just on this topic of morality and legal perspectives, but we don't have time for that now. My closing question I'll put to everyone is, if there's one thing that you'd like the audience to know or think differently about robots, what would it be? And I'm going to put that question first of all to Francesco.
In my opinion, is that we have to cover the gap and see the robots like service robots. So we have to use more and more this robot and stop to be scared of it.
Okay, well, that's short and sweet. Thank you very much. Excellent. One idea to go away with. And so, Anna, what would be your response?
I'm in the same idea with Francesco. I think we need education about robotics because people are starting to believe everything that they see in the news. That we see around with Sophia saying that she will kill people or something like this. And what we try to do, for example, for kids is to explain that every robot has an emergency button, or that they are programmed by humans and they are still yet to get there to that artificial intelligence that will do things on their own. And I think we should do better at explaining this to the citizens, but it's a lot easier when you have the robot with you and they can see just how much they are doing, because a robot can only do movements around its arms and people can see just how flexible they are or not. They watch Terminator and they expect robots are moving just like Schwarzenegger. So it's not, that's what I would do, education in the field of robotics.
Excellent, thank you, thank you. Jose Manuel.
Yeah, well, reflecting from the conversation that we are having and the different people that we are on this call and what we are discussing about, I think it's important to remind to us we should be very humble. So, and I'm humble when I see the situation that we have lived this year, how COVID has hit all of us, and how we needed to collaborate and work with other people to try to help. I think this is exactly what we should do in the future. And when we look also into issues, or when we look into technological advance or human advance, also I'm a believer that advance should be done in small steps that we should take together, okay, and we should ensure that we do them right.
Okay, excellent, thank you. John Erland?
We and I think that robots makes our lives better, easier, and maybe even more beautiful. So we should just get the more robots out there for people to get the experience.
Excellent, thank you. Nice, short and sweet again. Thank you very much for that. And Stefano?
I would say be very, very, very critical in everything. Should be very critical, and that's one of the bigger problems now. But with the media, because as we also mentioned before, you know, the media want to be impressive, either positively or scare you. So be very careful, because what you see is not the reality of robotics very often. And in that respect, I would like to stress that robotics is much more challenging than what people talk about. Everybody talking about AI, you know, you see something simulated in a computer and you think that, you know, everything is possible. Well, believe me, the interaction with the physical world is far, far, far more complicated than something very fancy calculating things on data. In that respect, I would say to everybody to Google Moravec paradox and read about it, because this is really a huge misconception that politicians and the general public is dealing with about the AI bubble.
Could you please put that in the chat, please, Stefano,
yes,
what you've just said? Yes. Okay, and the last word on this question before we close to Senka.
So I agree also with Stefano. I think people expect somehow too much from robots. On the other hand, I will also like to say that everyone should keep in mind that actually all roboticists and engineers are developing robots to make a world better place, not to kill or not to harm people. And also there is a whole military of scientists, researchers, engineers, and also not only roboticists, but also scientists from law, from social and psychological background, all working together in order to make robots safe, and also to make them work nicely with people.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're almost out of time now. That was a short but very powerful panel discussion. Thank you very much to everyone there. So we conclude the discussion. Thanks once again to our 6 panelists, and as always to Maya Hadzi-Selimovic and her team for enabling us to have this discussion. The central event closing ceremony starts in just a few minutes, and I hope everyone will log on back on via the link to that event as we bring the central event to a close. Meanwhile, I hope you've enjoyed our discussion this afternoon and that you leave with positive thoughts about the great potential of robotics for humanity. Thanks for joining us. Good evening and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hasta luego.